Ellie never liked clowns. Something about their painted smiles felt wrong, as if they were hiding something underneath. But her parents didn't care. For her 10th birthday, they hired Mr. Chuckles, a clown with a glowing reputation for making kids laugh. The party started normally enough. Ellie's friends arrived, the cake was served, and presents piled up on the table. When Mr. Chuckles appeared, juggling brightly colored balls, the kids cheered. But Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that his grin was too wide, his eyes too sharp. "Who's ready for some fun?" Mr. Chuckles bellowed. His voice was high-pitched but had an edge to it, like fingernails on glass. The kids clapped and giggled as he twisted balloons into animals and performed magic tricks. He made a rabbit appear from a hat and pulled an endless string of scarves from his sleeve. Everyone was delighted except Ellie. When the party was winding down, Ellie's parents called her over. "Mr. Chuckles has a special trick just for the birthday girl," her mom said, beaming. "I don't want to," Ellie muttered, eyeing the clown. Her dad nudged her forward. "Go on, sweetheart. Don't be rude." Reluctantly, Ellie stepped toward the clown. He knelt down so they were face to face, his painted smile stretching unnaturally as he held out a balloon. "Blow this up for me, Ellie," he said softly, his voice no longer playful. She hesitated, staring at the balloon. It felt wrong in her hands, cold and slimy, like skin. "Go on," he urged, his grin widening. "Blow it up." Ellie took a deep breath and blew. The balloon expanded, but instead of the cheerful squeak of rubber, it emitted a low, groaning sound. Her friends stopped laughing, their eyes fixed on the balloon as it grew larger. The groaning turned into a scream. Ellie dropped the balloon, but it didn't fall. Instead, it hovered in the air, its surface rippling. Faces appeared inside, twisted, screaming faces. Ellie stumbled back as the balloon popped with a deafening bang. A cloud of black mist burst forth, swirling around the backyard. The other kids screamed, but the sound was muffled, as if it were being swallowed by the mist. Ellie's parents froze, their faces blank, their bodies unnaturally still. When the mist cleared, the backyard was empty. No friends, no parents, just Ellie and Mr. Chuckles. The clown's face was different now. The paint had melted away, revealing pale, leathery skin stretched tightly over a gaunt skull. His eyes were black pits, and his grin was filled with jagged teeth. "You've been chosen," he hissed, his voice echoing unnaturally. Ellie turned to run, but the yard had changed. The fence was gone, replaced by the walls of a giant circus tent. The air was thick with the smell of rotting candy and burnt popcorn. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Chuckles boomed, his voice reverberating through the tent, "let's welcome our newest act." The lights dimmed, and a spotlight fell on Ellie. She tried to scream, but her voice was gone. She felt her limbs moving on their own, her arms twisting into grotesque shapes as her skin turned pale and her mouth stretched into an unnatural smile. The crowd roared with laughter, but when Ellie looked out, the audience wasn't human. Rows of clowns with empty eyes and painted faces clapped and jeered, their laughter echoing endlessly. Ellie realized the truth too late. The clowns weren't performers. They were the ones who had come before her. Outside, the neighbors heard faint giggling coming from Ellie's backyard. But when they peeked over the fence, there was nothing there. Just a single balloon tied to a post, its strings swaying gently in the breeze. When the traveling carnival rolled into town, the residents of Hollow Creek were eager for some excitement. Its arrival was sudden, with no flyers, no advertisements, just a sprawling carnival ground that seemed to appear overnight. Lila, Jake, and their friend Sophie decided to check it out. They'd heard whispers from the older kids at school that the carnival wasn't like any other. "They say it only comes once every 13 years, Jake said as they approached the gates. "Why? Is it cursed or something?" Lila asked, rolling her eyes. "No one knows," Sophie replied. "But the people who go, they don't always come back." Lila laughed nervously. "Sounds like a load of..." Her words trailed off as she saw the clown standing just inside the entrance. He was tall and gangly, his crimson and white suit stained and torn. His face paint was smeared, his eyes black voids that seemed to suck in the light. "Tickets, please," the clown crooned, holding out a gloved hand. "We don't have tickets," Jake said. The clown grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "Everyone has a ticket to the Carnival of Whispers. Just step inside." The trio exchanged uneasy glances but followed the clown through the gates. Inside, the carnival buzzed with strange energy. The rides moved without operators. The games stood unattended, prizes dangling in the wind. Crowds of people wandered aimlessly, their faces pale and expressionless. Sophie tugged on Jake's sleeve. "Look at their eyes," she whispered. Their eyes were empty, like dolls, and their smiles were too wide, as though carved into their faces. "We shouldn't be here," Lila said, grabbing Sophie's arm. But the clown was suddenly in front of them again, his movements unnaturally quick. "Don't leave yet," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "The fun is just beginning." He waved his hand, and the carnival around them seemed to shift. The ride screeched to a halt. The laughter of the crowd grew distorted, a cacophony of wails and moans. The clown stepped closer. "Would you like to see the Hall of Mirrors? Or maybe try your luck at the game booths?" Lila shook her head, backing away. "We're leaving." The clown's grin vanished, his face twisting into a snarl. "You don't leave the Carnival of Whispers. Not until the show is over." The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the lights around them flickered. A carousel nearby creaked to life, but the horses were skeletal, their hollow eyes glowing red. Jake grabbed Lila and Sophie, dragging them toward the exit, but the gates were gone. In their place was a towering funhouse, its entrance a gaping clown mouth with jagged teeth. They had no choice but to enter. Inside, the walls seemed alive, shifting and pulsing like they were breathing. Mirrors lined the corridors, reflecting not their faces but grotesque versions of themselves. Lila's reflection grinned at her, blood dripping from her mouth. Jake's reflection clawed at the glass, mouthing silent screams. Sophie's reflection was gone entirely, replaced by the grinning face of the clown. The laughter began, soft at first, then deafening. "What do you want?" Sophie screamed, spinning around. The clown's voice echoed from every direction. "You, the carnival needs new performers." The mirrors shattered, and hands reached out from the shards, grabbing Sophie and pulling her into the darkness. Her screams echoed, then stopped abruptly. Jake and Lila ran, their footsteps echoing in the endless maze. But no matter how far they ran, they ended up back at the center of the funhouse. The clown stood there, waiting. "You can't escape," he said, his grin widening. "The Carnival of Whispers always collects its guests." The last thing Lila saw was the clown lunging toward her, his hollow eyes filling her vision. The next day, the carnival was gone. The lot was empty, the ground untouched. But in the middle of the field stood a single mirror. If you looked closely, you could see 3 faces trapped inside, their mouths stretched into eternal, silent screams.